Hi, I'm Teresa Greco, the host of The Happy Hour, where we talk about the things that can help us to live our happiest life physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Today on the show, I have Becca Pearce. Becca, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Can you share a little bit more about yourself with our guests today?
I would love to. My name is Becca Pearce. I'm based out of just outside of Washington, D.C. And I'm just going to go straight into my story if you're okay with that. Does that? Okay.
Okay, sure.
So I'm going to take people back to 2011. In 2011, I was hired in the state of Maryland to become the first implementer of Obamacare for the state of Maryland as the CEO of the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange. I had spent years and years and years building up my life as corporate warrior, right? Going through all of these jobs, always in health insurance, getting promoted. And here I was a CEO by the time I was 39 years old, implementing one of the most major changes in healthcare that the state and the country had ever seen. And so I was hired in September of 2011, and by October 1st of 2013, we were going to completely and fundamentally change the way healthcare was delivered, the way from IT systems all the way through everything. And when I was hired, I didn't have any employees. I didn't have an office. I didn't have anything. The IT system hadn't been decided upon. The legislation hadn't really been defined. Yet it was the most important thing that was happening for the governor in the state of Maryland. And so I, like a moth to a flame, I took the job and I spent 2 years working nonstop. And I think that, people understand this. If you're a corporate warrior, you understand that you give your life and soul, you give everything to this job. The added piece of this for me was that I was so aligned with my values. We were going to, help give peace of mind to hundreds of thousands of people in the state who never had peace of mind before. I could not have believed more in what we were doing. And so when I went all in, I went all in. I had a five-year-old daughter at the time for those 2 years. I never went to school once. I have no idea who her teachers were. I dropped her off the minute daycare, preschool, the pre-daycare opened. It was just nonstop kind of work. And in December of 2013, 2 months after it was supposed to turn on, I lost my job quite publicly because it did not turn on the way it was supposed to. And at the end of that open enrollment period, we had actually enrolled 300,000 people and they now had the health insurance. But because it didn't turn on technically the way it was supposed to, I lost my job above the fold with a picture, on the news at 5, 6, and 11. So it was devastating to me. And so I'm just going to stop there at that part of the story because the whole second part of the story. But I think it's, as your listeners are thinking about, I'm imagining that many of your listeners can probably relate to this, right? Being that corporate warrior and thinking that this was the most important thing in your life.
Yeah, where you dedicate, I'm sure most of your life was to your work. Like how many hours did you have remaining for yourself in any of this period? Like did you even have weekends where it would be like downtime?
It's funny because I say to myself, I invited my family over for one of the summer holidays in the United States. I took 4 hours off that day to host my family. It was one of those things where I worked all day Saturday. I worked all day Sunday. I just, for me to take 4 hours off and to note that, I'm taking 4 hours off on a long summer weekend. That's really how I functioned. I went to bed at midnight and I usually woke up around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, worried about what was happening. So I barely slept.
And were you cognizant, because I know we're going to kind of go into it too, but were you cognizant at that point at how all of this was affecting your physical body?
I don't think I did. I think the only way that I think about it is that I just didn't have time for anything, right? I think is also especially for women, it's so easy to say, it just doesn't matter. I don't have time for that. Like, God forbid your daughter or son have something wrong with them and you'll be like, oh, I'll figure it out. Right? I'll get them to the doctor. You would, but as women, we just always constantly put ourselves on the back burner. And so I think there was a little bit of recognition that I was ignoring things a little bit, but no real recognition.
Okay, so there you are at the pinnacle of your career. Would you say that was the pinnacle, you having achieved all of that by 39?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so there you are at the pinnacle, and then?
So I lose my job quite publicly, like I say, and it was devastating. It was, this was beyond for me just quote unquote losing a job. This was losing my identity. Who was I if I wasn't this person? And who was I if I had dedicated my whole life, the last 2 years, every moment of my life for the last 2 years, and it failed? Like, just all of the emotional turmoil that goes along with that. Fortunately, I landed on my feet. I had 3 lucrative job offers within 3 weeks. I landed on my feet at, working for a friend of mine in a company that I knew, in a business that I understood. I was back in health insurance and landed on my feet as a vice president within a hospital system. And so here I am thinking, okay, I'm in good shape. Well, 16 months from the time that I lost my job, my 7-year-old at that point was talking into my left ear. And I said, you can't talk into mommy's bad ear. You have to talk into mommy's good ear. And so a friend of mine, I told her that story and she says, single-sided deafness isn't normal, right? Like, you should really go get your hearing checked out. I just thought, I'm 43. My dad lost his hearing. Like, I was coming up with all sorts of excuses to just ignore this. When I went in for the hearing exam, I walked out of that hearing exam finding out that I had a brain tumor the size of a ping pong ball, and I needed surgery imminently. It was 5 weeks from the time that I was diagnosed to the time that I was on the table. I had a full craniotomy, so they, pulled open the entire part of my head to pull the brain tumor out. I was on the table for 12 hours.
Wow.
When I woke up, my face was paralyzed. My face was paralyzed for a year. I'm mostly blind in my left eye. I'm deaf in my left ear because of the surgery. I was going deaf anyway, but fully deaf now in my left ear because of the surgery. It was as if I had a stroke on the table. When I came out, my entire left side was just, in terrible shape. And so the good news is it was benign and operable. The bad news is, had I actually gone to the doctor when I started to lose my hearing, had I actually listened to my body, going back to your question, had I actually listened to my body when it started to happen, none of those side effects I just told you about would have been guaranteed. It would have stopped growing 2 years earlier, and the surgery would not have been nearly as bad as it was.
So Becca, why do you think, now that you can look back, right? And because we're going to continue to explore more of your story to like where you are now and everything that, as you look back, you realize, it's always like 20/20 eyesight now that you can look back, right? And so why do you think that we push ourselves so hard like that? Because I don't think it was the money for you that you were pushing. Like, what are those things that make people go almost beyond what's reasonable, beyond almost themselves, sacrificing, your own well-being, but you just think, yeah, it's okay, I don't have time for this? Because what are those things that we think about that in essence almost push us beyond our boundaries like that?
It's funny. A friend of mine said to me early on in my career, she says, "Oh, you're an overachiever." And I was like, I don't even know what you're saying to me. Like, I don't even know what that means. But I think about it now, and there is this compulsion. And I think it happens for a lot of people that it's almost a compulsion to keep achieving, to keep proving myself, right? For me, it was
Mm,
this constant need to prove that I could do more, that I was smarter, that I was, things like that. And I think
yeah.
for me, it comes from, I was rewarded for my brains as a child,
Mhm.
right? I wasn't rewarded for the effort. I was rewarded for my brains. And so I learned that being smart was the biggest value that I had to offer. And so
Mhm.
for me, it was this constant proof. Okay, well, now I need to achieve the next thing. Now I need to achieve the next thing to prove to myself, because that's how I also proved to myself that I was worthy.
Mm. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, because I'm also the achiever personality type. I've done some different personality tests, and for exactly all the things that you said, that was all same thing for me, that I learned that my value was in my academics and my smarts. And it's probably still, even though I'm much more cognizant of it, but I think it's still, the reason why I just delivered my third TEDx talk like yesterday, actually. And
Congratulations.
so thank you, thank you, thank you. But there, yeah, so much work. And I think at this point, I think I'm good. But again, all of them is all tied to my mission of helping to make the world a happier place. So it wasn't actually about the title. So that's what I mean. It's like I'm cognizant of it, but I think I still kind of like to push myself beyond comfortable boundaries too. But you had gone beyond what's comfortable, because
Right. Yes, right.
you had things that were talking to you for probably a long time that you just ignored.
Yes. Yes. And I think that it's easy to get caught up in that belief that this is the most important, right? You're on this train.
Mhm.
It's very hard to shift that train. And I remember, at the time that I was at the exchange, I mean, this is very sad to share, but I didn't think that my family understood what I was going through. Like, I think people get in this place where it's so difficult and they're so challenged that they think that the people who love them the most aren't going to understand just what they're going through. And so I lost that connection with my family for those 2 years. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until I was able to I was forced to step
Mhm.
back, right? I was
Mhm.
forced into this place of, oh my gosh, like what just happened? But it wasn't until that happened that I was able to finally go, oh, wait, I just lost myself for 2 years. I didn't realize that until now.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump back into the story. So you do the surgery, and then you had a lot of rehabilitation that you had to do, but you were doing all of that because
So at the time, so we're talking about this overachiever personality, and it's the funny thing is, and even if you looked at my LinkedIn, it says, thought I'd be back on my CEO-dom trip, right? Like, um, and so I had to prove to myself that I could do the job. And part of this, I think, is overachiever. Part of this is also, I think, just I didn't want the brain tumor to win. And so I had
Mhm.
to prove to myself that I could do it again. And let's be clear, like I had a lot of deficits once, post brain surgery. Like, um, I lost the ability to, nobody can really multitask, but I really lost the ability to multitask. Like I really was struggling, but had to prove to myself that I could do the job again. And so I went back to work, and it took me maybe 9 months or a year. And right at the time that I figured out that I could do it, I had a decision to make one morning. I could either go to my 8 o'clock meeting, or I could put my daughter on the bus at 8:30. And all I remember thinking was, what if I never get to put her on the bus again? I just want to put her on the bus one more day. There was, those 5 weeks, I didn't know whether I was going to be able to do it again. It was, all of the fears of the future. I'm never going to see her graduate. I'm never going to see her get married. I'm never going to see all of these things. All I wanted to do was put her on the bus. And so at that point in my life, I just said, I can't do this anymore. I don't want
Mhm.
to be a CEO anymore. I don't need the stress. This is not what life is about for me anymore. I understand that it got me to where I was, and I appreciate that, but that is absolutely not who I want to be moving forward. And I quit my job. And my husband said,
Wow.
"You did what?" um,
Wow,
yeah,
wow.
yeah,
And so what had transpired over that year that made you realize that you were missing out on things? That, I mean, you would have had to have recognized the beauty and the benefit of being able to be more present to your daughter, to your family that you had been missing out on.
for sure. I mean, I joke that, I'm sort of like a bad after school special. Like, I used to be this person who, drop your emotions at the door. We got stuff to do.
Mhm.
My biggest comment to my daughter when she would start crying was pull it together. Right. I mean, I
Mhm.
spent my entire life just moving, and movement was was my defense mechanism. And so post surgery, you can't move, first of all, and I woke up and I just remember thinking, "Oh, thank God I'm alive." Literally,
Mhm.
that's the first thing I was like, "I'm alive. Oh
Wow.
my God, they're waking me up. Oh my God, thank God I'm alive." And all of a sudden, my perspective on life completely changed, right? It was, my surgery was in May. In the middle of June, it was I'm in Washington, D.C. It's supposed to be 80 degrees and sunny. It was like 60 degrees and raining. And I'm like, what a wonderful day. Right? Like every day it was just like this change of perspective where I recognize now the importance of emotion, right? It's okay to feel emotion. I had spent 43 years learning to avoid emotion. And so this recognition, all of these things, it was a massive shift in my life that finally allowed me to recognize like I almost lost these things. The ability to just be here and see my daughter and spend time with my daughter and be with my husband and spend time with my husband. I almost lost all that. And at one point in my life, I didn't think it was going to be all that big of a deal that I lost it. And so this recognition, this 180-degree turn is what really changed everything for me.
Wow, I just got goosebumps all over because I think it's in the recognition of how important those parts of our lives are. But
Mhm.
when we place too much emphasis on work or on whatever could be kind of taking us away from having uh, more of a balanced life, like what kind of things have you recognized now that we're out of balance? And
Oh,
now you're like, geez,
sure.
now, I should have spent like, I don't know, 25% more time. And not that we can categorize it like that, but I should have, it shouldn't have been 100% work. It could have been a little more like this.
Yeah, and I think that that is this control factor for sure. Like at that point in my life, and I think for overachievers, there is a big element of control. Like I have control over my future. I believed that if I just tried harder, then
Mhm.
I could fix it. But the truth is, that's not always the case. That's the case sometimes, but that is not really usually the case. And what I learned from my body was that there was nothing I could do to make that nerve grow back faster. There was
Yeah.
nothing I could do. I couldn't walk more. I couldn't do any exercises. There was nothing in my control. And I think that was the reckoning. That's the reckoning to say none of this is in my control. And I now what I do have control over is how I see and how I spend my time. Time is the only non-renewable resource, and that was the recognition that like, "Oh, I'm never gonna get those 2 years back. I'm never gonna be able to create memories from those 2 years that I missed with my daughter and my husband, but I can
Mhm.
moving forward."
Yeah. And it probably makes going forward that much more powerful in the sense that you are able to recognize because of the fact that it was absent, that it means that much more to you now.
Yeah. It is absolutely my biggest boundary. Absolutely, anything related to my family.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So, what advice would you give to somebody who is kind of stuck on that hamster wheel of just, and you almost feel like you can't get off, right? And I'm sure you felt like that too, because you had so many people that you were counting on and you were on there and just striving higher and faster. And that you think, well, if I get off, all this other stuff's going to fall apart,
Yeah.
that this is not going to work, or, for various reasons that we might rationalize for why we should continue to stay on that wheel.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm an executive coach now, a personal executive coach, and I work with a lot of people who are in this process of, they've done everything they're supposed to do their entire lives. They have the job that they were supposed to have. They've achieved what they think they were supposed to achieve. They've taken care of their kids. They've taken care of their dog. They've taken care of their husbands. They've taken care of their parents, right? Like all of these things. And they feel like they realize that they're not happy, but they also feel stuck. And usually that comes down to 2 or 3 reasons. One is the shoulding. From the outside, I should really be happy. Like other people would feel really would love what I have, right? So I should be happy, right? So there's this perception that, if you have whatever it is that you have, whether it's a, white picket fence and a 4-bedroom house or whatever, that you should be happy because this is what, for whatever reason, we've been striving for. And so people get nervous and uncomfortable admitting that they're unhappy in this situation because they feel like they should be happy. The second thing is that people get stuck because of the financial constraints, right? They believe that they've been making X amount of money and this is what they're accustomed to, and they don't think they can get out of that. Combined very closely, they run directly hand in hand with, I've spent my entire life working at this, insert whatever this is, and I don't have any transferable skills. Who would hire me to do anything different than IT or HR or insert whatever it is? And so they feel completely stuck in what it is that they're doing. And so what I would say to both of those situations is, really? Like truly ask yourself, is this true? Right? Like, do I really need the money that I make? And do I really not have any transferable skills? Like I've been around for a long time. I'm pretty sure that I've got transferable skills, but like it really takes a little self reflection for you to allow yourself that space to say, darn it, I'm good at things that aren't necessarily related directly to what I've been doing.
So let's use that then to bounce back into the story. And so you're like, I'm quitting. Your husband, who you must have been the primary breadwinner at
I
that,
was,
at that.
I was,
And he's like, okay, and what the heck did you do?
right.
So you've decided to hop off the hamster wheel.
Mhm.
And so now, so how, for those people that might have exactly that fear around what do you do if you recognize you're not happy, you want to jump off, what do you do?
So in truthfulness, I did have conversations with my husband, and the conversation went something like this. I can't do this anymore. I'm miserable. This isn't who I am anymore. And I was the breadwinner, and he loves stability. Like he just brings stability to everything that he does in his life. And so we were coming from 2 different places because I knew I couldn't do this in my heart of hearts anymore. And I also understood that I was the breadwinner and I was that was the stability that we brought. And so what I had done was I actually had already invested in myself. The number one thing you can do is invest in yourself to figure out what it is. So I knew that I had for 20 years climbed the corporate ladder, been the only woman in the boardroom, and had all of this experience that I could bring to the table for other people. So I went back to school to become a certified executive coach. And at that point, that's when I felt confident to say, I know what I'm going to do next. Because the third thing that keeps people stuck is fear of the unknown. People don't fear change, people fear uncertainty. And until you create that certainty for yourself to know where you're going, it's very difficult to make that change. So I had gone back to school, and my husband and I had very clear conversations about what the financial impact was going to be to the family. We had gone through the finances. We knew how much we spent. We knew how much we were going to be losing, because we had a gap. He made this, we spent this, we were going to have that gap. And we committed to it together to say, this is what we're choosing to do. So it was a conscious decision and discussion and a financial look at the money and creating certainty for where we were going to go next that allowed us to finally make that change.
Mm-hmm. So now I'm going to fast forward just a little bit. So now you're in this new role that you first saw that you were going to enjoy. So
Yep.
maybe share a little bit about what that was, because then there's another part to it. So,
Sure.
so I love this. I love this. I haven't had an interview that's had this kind of storyline weaving through as we dissect it and look back. So it's actually quite fun. So yeah, tell us about how like that next section looked like.
Sure. So in 2017, I opened my my own executive coaching firm, and I have been coaching for, it's now 2026. So I've been coaching until at 2024. I finally started listening to people. So like I said, I've been coaching business owners. I've been coaching women through significant change. I have some of the people that I work with, not only I've had business owners grow their business from $250,000 to $3.5 million working together. You know, I've had another one go from $2 to $8 million working together. I've had people leave their startup that they started, which they was 100% of their identity, move to another state to completely start over. Like, people make significant changes while working with me. And in 2024, I started to actually listen to people when they said, you know what? I changed my life when I heard your story. I thought when I heard I could do it because I knew you could do it. And people had been saying that to me for years. Oh, you have a story to write. You have a story to write. But I didn't listen to it until 2024. And at that point, I began to write a book. And so my book is called You Don't Have to Achieve to Be Loved. And I named it that because that was the realization that I had post-surgery that allowed me to change my life, that I had this core belief that I believed that achievement equated to, and I
Mm-hmm.
believe that there are so many people out there that believe this to be true, that that's what keeps people stuck.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that's totally my story too, I had, part of it wearing many different masks, trying to meet the expectations of others in a variety of different ways so that I would be loved, accepted, and happy. Because it was always tied to performance. That love is tied to me being the good girl, the good daughter, the good student. There are all of the different equations that all equate to love in the end. But what I realized was that it all came from the fact that I wasn't loving myself, that I didn't even know what self-love was. Like, nobody talked to me about self-love, that love was outside of me and all of these other people and are my relationships and my accomplishments and everything outside of me. And that it was only when I was at the lowest point of my life and I started to go inward. So it was the practice of meditation that had me go inward and then discover a part of myself that I knew nothing about, which was my spiritual self. And that part, as soon as I connected, there was so much love inside of there. And I'm like, what the heck? I didn't know anything about this, that my love was me looking for it in everybody else and then complaining that people didn't love me the way that I wanted to, not knowing that I wasn't loving myself at all. And then when I connected to that love, it then tuned me into all the ways that I wasn't loving myself mentally, emotionally, and physically, that I was actually hating on myself in many respects. And so I'm wondering if, because you've kind of tied that achievement to that love, is self-love part of this process of evolving for you too, or of recognition for yourself?
Yeah, for sure. You can only accept from other people what you can give yourself the grace for, right? And
Mhm.
so this idea of pushing myself more and more and more, and I think this happens for a lot of people, right? The push is that external piece. That push is, that negative voice that for all of us who are overachievers thought it was the reason that we got to where we were, right? That negative, that self-hate, that you're no good if you don't, propelled us to where we were, right? And it's that recognition, that slowing down to say, wait a minute, I'm good enough just because, right?
Mm.
It's that belief in ourselves, and it's that self-love to say, hey, I'm worth it. That allows us to open up to other people in a different way.
Mhm. And to love all the different aspects of ourselves too. Like, I think part of recognizing that you had transferable skills within you, that you weren't just, pigeonholing yourself into, like, you as the corporate warrior, but that you could be doing all these other things. Did it also help you to acknowledge other parts of yourself too, like the part of you as a mother and the part of you as a spouse, and maybe other areas, and I guess because our identity is made up of, I would say, many different things, right? It isn't just the one that you had attributed yourself to, but now you've been able probably to assume many different. I almost feel uncomfortable even about calling them roles, because I feel like they're just all like facets of ourselves, right? And I think our interaction with those people or those situations help us to recognize the beautiful facets of ourselves.
Yeah, and I think for what's coming up for me as you're talking is just this, I see this for strong women too, is that if you break the fear of that, if you break one veneer, it's all going to crack. Right. And
Mhm.
so when I think about my relationship with my daughter and my husband, it was just, and even all the people around me, but definitely I think about my daughter and this, you know, pull it together. Right. I didn't have room for her emotion because I didn't have room for my own emotion, because I didn't have
Mhm.
time for my own emotion. So therefore I didn't have time for her emotion at the time either. Right. And so now this recognition that I have these emotions and that I am at peace with who I am, and that it's okay to slow down. It's okay to have emotions. It's okay to want something different than what I thought I wanted for 43 years. And
Mhm.
giving myself that space makes me a totally different person, where I think I was one faceted. I think before I really was so driven and so kind of corporate and career focused that I lost those other facets. And only
Mhm.
now that I love myself in a different way do I have all of those facets showing up differently.
Mhm. So maybe you could speak to how you're loving yourself more. Because I think there are some misconceptions around what self-love really is.
Yeah.
And that self-love is more than just, oh, I'm going to go get my nails done, or I'm going to get my hair. Like it's so much deeper than that. And when I started to tune into all the ways that I wasn't loving myself mentally, emotionally, and physically, the the biggest part was the mental part.
Mhm.
I was hating on myself. Instead of being my greatest cheerleader, I was my own worst enemy. Even when I achieved things, I was still cutting myself up, just like, oh, well, that wasn't enough, and you fell short here. And I could never just bask in the glory of it.
Mhm.
And still looking for those accolades and that validation outside of myself. It's almost like I didn't know how to give any of that to myself. And for,
Mhm.
like, probably even the small things that you were then able to do in your recovery process, to be able
Mhm.
to, where you were probably at first looking at the big gap between where you were before and where you're at now. And then all the, like, really small little milestone achievements that you had, you know, along this entire journey to, like, where you are today.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to say within all of that, but for sure, I think, um, the question about how do I love myself, it is that, good job. right? It's that simple. Like, what did I do a good job? Like, what am I proud of myself for today? Because I that idea of being proud of yourself, like for me, it was uh, frowned upon growing up.
Yeah.
How dare you?
Yeah.
Who do you think you are? But this recognition,
Yes.
right? Like this
Yeah.
recognition for me, and you know, I do what I do now, and the reason that I wrote the book is because I want people to be able to see that it's okay to be proud of yourself, to love yourself, to be who you want to be without having to go through all the pain and heartache that I went through to actually come to
Yeah.
these realizations. Because for me, it was, yes, I spent probably several years with the before and the after surgery, and mourning the before. Oh, you know, I don't have that anymore. And then, you know, there was a time period directly following surgery where every 12 hours something got better. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I turned my head without throwing up, and oh, I took 3 steps, and oh, I was able to go up a stair, and you know, those types of things. But then that slowed down, and then it became that mourning of the past. And it wasn't until I started to say, hey, you know what, you're amazing, Becca, right? And it took a lot of effort. Like, I had a lot of therapy, I had a lot of, you know, I always have a coach, and I was in therapy for a long time, and there was a lot of self-talk in the terms of, you know, not just an affirmation, but an affirmation in a way that allowed me to change my thinking. And it was something like this. It was like, today, I choose to believe that there's a potential that somebody might think this about me, right? How many just caveats did we put on that? 5. That potentially maybe somebody might think this about me. And it was that language that allowed me to finally get to the point where I'm like, yes, I am inspirational for people. I do love myself. I appreciate who I am. And I want to share something that I think is very funny, but is actually very important too, which is when I was diagnosed, I did not, I pre-diagnosed myself, you know, took it to the Google, blah, 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 Dr. Google. Um, but there were several days that I did not know that my brain tumor was benign. And so during that time, I thought about how I was going to be remembered, how I was going to take care of my family after I was gone. I thought about, you name it, who was going to come to the funeral. Thought about everything. I never once thought to myself, I cannot believe I did not lose those last 5 pounds.
No.
I mean, if you talk about like the base layer of self-love,
Yeah.
this body is amazing. I don't care what it looks like. It is amazing that
Yeah.
I'm able to get up every day and do what I want to do.
No, it's incredible. It's incredible. So, and I know we're tight for time because you have to leave us. And so what other little nuggets can you leave us that people are going to come away from reading your books? I'm going to get you to share, you know, where they can find it and everything, but can you share with us maybe some other little nuggets of light bulb moments that you were able to come across? Because I live by the philosophy that I don't have to go through the muck. Like I can learn through you. I am not one of those
Good.
people that say, "Oh, it's going to be different for me. Don't worry." And then I have to like fall on my face and then say, "Oh yeah, it was exactly as so and so said it would." No, you tell me, and then I will learn from you, and I will avoid the pitfalls. So, if are there any other things that you want to speak to, that if this resonates, that people are, you know, with anybody that's living this same, you know, corporate warrior lifestyle, and that we don't, I hope that we don't have to hit that rock bottom, that we don't have to have that crossroad moment that's been brought on because of loss and illness, a death, you know, other things that force us to now that, you know, dark night of the soul, like lots of those things that are
Mhm.
just like, oh, you know, there's only going up from here. Anything else that you could share with us?
Yeah, there's actually 2 that I think are one of them is very near to my heart, and it's very I'm talk about it regularly, and often with tears in my eyes. Time, like I said, time is the only thing that matters. It was this realization that, like, everything we've been sold is a complete lie. Like, it doesn't matter, right? When you receive a
Wow.
diagnosis, the only thing that matters to you in life is time. The lack of time that you have left, the lack of the ability to just kind of go through life thinking that everything's going to be great and fine, because you never know. We are not promised tomorrow. And if I could get back those 2 years and do it differently, and have seen my daughter grow for those 2 years, and been able to connect with my husband in the way that we now are able to reconnect, I could have been a totally different person. And so it is so painful for me to watch people, because when somebody dies before their time, it's inevitable for you to stop and go, oh my gosh, and you think about your life, right? But that usually disappears within a week, right? Oh, I got to go to the grocery store, and oh, this is really important for work, and and we fall back into the same routines. I just beg for people to just stop for a minute and reassess for themselves what actually matters in life. And in my book, I actually have a process that we go through to force you down that path, to think about, let me prioritize what's really important to me. The second one is this: please, 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 please go to the doctor. I don't care if you're scared. I don't care if you think work is more expensive or more important. Had I gone to the doctor when I first started to lose my hearing, my face wouldn't have been paralyzed. My recovery would have been way faster. I mean, all of the side effects that I still deal with today would have been non-existent if I had just gone to the doctor 2 years earlier, when I started to lose my hearing and the brain tumor didn't start growing into my brainstem. Just go to the doctor as soon as you start to feel anything. And it's their job, right, to see you and recognize what's going on. So please go to the doctor. Those are the two things that I just truly from my heart are the most
And
important things.
Thank you. Thank you. Such beautiful, powerful reminders, and linked, right? Those two things are linked, that if you recognize that time is precious, and that every day is a gift, that if your body is speaking to you, right, that all aspects are always communicating with us, but we often ignore it for various reasons, because we're prioritizing work, or we don't think it's that bad. But if usually it'll starts off as like a little knock, right? Like, hey, I think you need to go see somebody about this. And you're like, well, whatever, I'll take an Advil, or whatever, I'll have some wine or whatever. And next thing you know, you go to the doctors. And then sometimes, though, the doctor just gives you a Band-Aid too, right? And says, oh, here's the prescription, and, and off you are, and off you go, thinking, okay, that's like, the quick solution. We all want the quick pill that's going to fix us. And then we can, continue on our way. But to listen to the signs, and to take them seriously, and recognizing them as feedback for ourselves. And when we love ourselves, I now see my body as a temple, the temple that allows me to do all the things that I want to do every single day. And that if I don't take care of this temple, I won't be able to accomplish my goals and aspirations, the really big things, but just like the everyday tasks that you're saying. And so I try to teach children this from young, recognizing it's not, because I didn't know before. I just thought, well, it's your body, whatever. No, it's a temple. It's a temple. And when you said it is so smart, it is much more intelligent than I think even doctors recognize. And when you see it as the vehicle, the vessel that allows you to do the things that you came here to do, right? To live your happiest life, and to have the goals that you're going to accomplish. And that if you see it like that, it's like, of course I'm going to give it sleep. Of course I'm going to drink enough water. Of course I'm going to feed it good food. Of course I'm going to give it rest. Of course, because we need it to be able to do all the different things that we want to do.
And I love that disconnection a little bit, like I'm going to give my body this because it becomes the vessel that allows, like you said, allows my soul to be who I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah, beautiful. Now, Becca, if you could share a little bit more about where people can grab your book and where they can find out a little more about you, please.
Yeah, sure. So again, the book is called You Don't Have to Achieve to Be Loved. And you, of course, can get it on Amazon, but you can get it anyplace else as well. And the best way to find me and more information is morebeccapearce.com. And you can get to my book there. You can find about my speaking engagements there. You can find about my coaching there. So more Becca Pearce, and Pearce is Pearce. So it's really important because if you go to Pierce, there's nothing there. So it's morebeccapearce.com. And that's the best way to get a hold of me. Like I said, you can do everything there, buy the book and see everything there.
I want to thank you so much for sharing your story today. It was really excellent. Thank you. And all the wisdom that you were able to transmit and share with us through the story.
Thank you. It was so nice to be here with you.
If you like the show today, please like and subscribe. To find out more about my speaking and coaching services, check out my website at teresagreco.ca or connect with me on social media at Teresa Greco _steps to happiness or steps to happiness with Teresa Greco.